The wind howled through the valley, carrying the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, as if the world itself was whispering secrets. In a small, weathered cottage at the edge of Willowbrook, Eleanor sat by the fire, her trembling hands clutching a shawl that had seen decades of winters. Tonight, she would meet her granddaughter's betrothed, and the weight of a long-buried promise pressed against her heart. Eleanor was 83, her face a map of lines etched by joy and sorrow. Her eyes, though dimmed by time, still held a spark of defiance, a refusal to let the world forget her story. The cottage was quiet save for the crackle of the fire, but her mind was loud with memories of her daughter, Margaret, gone too soon, and of the vow she'd made to protect something precious. Tonight, that vow would come full circle. The door creaked open, and Clara stepped inside, her white dress catching the firelight like a beacon. At 22, she was radiant, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes bright with the nervous excitement of a bride-to-be. Behind her stood James, her fiancé, a tall young man with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. Eleanor's gaze softened as she looked at Clara, seeing Margaret in every curve of her face. "Come, child," she said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "There's something I need to give you." Clara knelt beside her grandmother, her hands folding into Eleanor's. "Gran, you didn't have to," she began, but Eleanor shook her head. "This isn't a gift, Clara. It's a legacy." She reached for a wooden box on the mantel, its surface worn smooth by years of touch. Inside lay a delicate silver locket, its intricate engravings catching the light. Clara's breath caught as Eleanor placed it in her hands. "This was your mother's," Eleanor said softly, "and it holds more than you know." The locket was heavier than Clara expected, as if it carried the weight of untold stories. She opened it, expecting a photograph, but found only a tiny, folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Her fingers hesitated, sensing the gravity of the moment. Eleanor's eyes, now glistening, urged her to unfold it. The paper revealed a single line in Margaret's elegant script: "Find the meadow where the willow bends." Clara looked up, confused. "What does it mean, Gran?" Eleanor's gaze drifted to the window, where the moon hung low over the hills. "Your mother loved that meadow," she said. "She'd spend hours there, dreaming, writing, planning a life she never got to live. She was only 25 when the fever took her, Clara, but she left something behind, something she wanted you to have when the time was right." Eleanor's voice cracked, and James, standing quietly by the door, stepped forward, his presence a steady anchor in the room. Clara's fingers traced the locket's edges, her heart pounding. "What did she leave, Gran?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor leaned closer, her shawl slipping slightly from her shoulders. "It's not just the locket, child. It's what it leads to. Tomorrow, you and James must go to the meadow. Follow the willow's shadow at dawn. You'll understand then." The night deepened as Eleanor shared stories of Margarethier laughter, her stubborn streak, her dreams of a world beyond Willowbrook. Clara listened, her heart swelling with love and loss for a mother she barely remembered. James, too, was drawn in, his initial awkwardness giving way to quiet reverence. As the fire died to embers, Eleanor's voice grew faint, but her words carried a fierce resolve. "Promise me you'll go," she said, gripping Clara's hand. "Promise me you'll find what she left for you." Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. "I promise, Gran." The weight of the locket felt like a tether to her mother, to a past she longed to touch. As she and James left the cottage, the wind seemed to carry Eleanor's words, urging them toward the meadow and the mystery it held. The next morning, Clara and James set out at dawn, the locket tucked safely in Clara's pocket. The countryside was alive with the hum of crickets and the soft glow of sunrise. The meadow was a mile from the cottage, a sprawling field dotted with wildflowers and framed by a single, ancient willow tree. Its branches swayed gently, casting a long shadow across the grass. Clara's heart raced as she followed the shadow's path, James close behind, his hand brushing hers in silent support. They reached the spot where the shadow ended, a patch of earth beneath the willow's embrace. Clara knelt, her fingers brushing the soil, unsure of what she was searching for. "Maybe it's a metaphor," James suggested, his voice gentle. "Maybe she meant for you to find peace here." But Clara shook her head, her intuition sharp. "No, it's something real. I can feel it. As she dug, her fingers hit something hard, a small, metal box buried shallowly in the earth. Her breath caught as she pulled it free, its surface rusted but intact. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with Margaret's handwriting. Clara's hands trembled as she opened it, her eyes scanning the first page. To my daughter, Clara, may you know the strength you carry. The journal was a collection of letters, poems, and dreams, Margaret's hopes for Clara, written in the months before her death. But there was more. Tucked between the pages was a key, small and ornate, with no explanation. Clara's mind raced. What does this open? She whispered, looking to James. Before he could answer, a shadow fell across the meadow, a stranger, an older man with weathered features, watching them from a distance. His presence felt like a storm cloud on the horizon, unexpected and heavy with intent. Who are you? Clara called, her voice sharp. The man stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the journal. I knew your mother, he said, his voice low and rough. My name's Thomas. And that key, it's not just a keepsake. It's trouble. Clara's grip tightened on the journal, the key glinting in her palm like a warning. Thomas stood at the edge of the meadow, his weathered face unreadable, his eyes darting between her and the leather-bound pages. The morning air, once soft with the promise of discovery, now felt charged, as if the willow itself was holding its breath. Who are you to my mother? Clara demanded, her voice steady despite the unease curling in her chest. James stepped closer, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, a silent vow to stand by her. Thomas hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground before meeting hers again. I was her friend, he said, the words heavy with unspoken history. And I promised Margaret I'd keep her secrets safe. That key you're holding gets part of one. Clara's heart pounded as she glanced at the journal, its pages whispering of her mother's life. What does it open? She asked, holding the key up. Thomas's expression darkened. Something she hid to protect you. But it's not safe to talk here. Meet me at the old mill by the river at dusk. Bring the journal, but don't tell anyone, not even your grandmother. The warning hung in the air as Thomas turned and vanished into the trees, leaving Clara and James in stunned silence. We can't trust him, James said, his voice low. He comes out of nowhere, knows too much. What if he's after something? Clara nodded, but her fingers traced the journal's edges, her mother's words pulling at her. Maybe, she said, but he knew her. I need to know what he knows. They returned to the cottage, the journal and key hidden in Clara's bag. Eleanor was waiting, her shawl wrapped tightly around her, her eyes searching Clara's face. Did you find it? She asked, her voice trembling with hope. Clara hesitated, Thomas's warning echoing in her mind. We found a journal, she said carefully, and a key. Do you know what it's for? Eleanor's face paled, her hands clutching the arms of her chair. A key, she whispered. She never told me about a key. The lie in Eleanor's eyes was subtle, but Clara caught a flicker of fear, quickly masked. Her grandmother, the woman who'd raised her, was hiding something. The realization stung, but Clara kept her voice steady. We'll figure it out, Gran, she said, forcing a smile. Eleanor nodded, but her gaze lingered on the bag where the journal was hidden, as if she could sense its weight. That afternoon, Clara and James pored over the journal in the privacy of her childhood bedroom. The pages were a tapestry of Margaret's heart letters to Clara, written as if she knew her time was short, poems about love and loss, and cryptic notes about a promise and a debt. One entry stood out. The mill holds the truth, but only the brave will open it. Clara's pulse quickened. The mill, she said. That's where Thomas told us to go. James frowned, his fingers brushing the page. This feels bigger than a keepsake, Clara. Your mother was hiding something worth protecting, or hiding from. Clara nodded, her mind racing. The journal spoke of a life Margaret had kept secret, even from Eleanor. Was Thomas a friend, as he claimed, or part of that secret? As dusk approached, they made their way to the old mill, its crumbling stone walls looming against the fading light. The river roared nearby, its sound masking their footsteps. Clara clutched the journal, the key tucked in her pocket, her heart torn between curiosity and dread. James scanned the shadows, his jaw tight. If he tries anything, he whispered, we leave. Thomas was waiting inside, his silhouette framed by a broken window. You came, he said, his voice softer now, almost relieved. He stepped into the light, revealing a scar across his cheek, a mark of a life hard-lived. Margaret was more than a friend, he admitted, his eyes distant. We were in love, once. Before she married your father. She made me swear to protect you, Clara, and to keep this from falling into the wrong hands. He gestured to the key. It opens a lockbox hidden in the mill's foundation. Inside is proof of something your mother uncovered, something dangerous. She worked for a man named Carver, a landowner who wasn't what he seemed. She found evidence of his crimes, things that could ruin him. She hid it to keep you safe, but Carver's still out there, and he's been looking for it ever since. Clara's breath caught. Crimes? What kind? Thomas's jaw tightened. Fraud, theft, worse. Margaret was going to expose him, but she got sick before she could. She left the journal and key for you, hoping you'd be strong enough to finish what she started. He paused, his eyes searching hers. But you need to decide if you're ready for what comes next. Before Clara could respond, a creak echoed from the mill's entrance. James spun around, his body tense. A figure stepped into the doorway, an older woman, her face half hidden in shadow. Clara, she said, her voice sharp and familiar. It was Eleanor. Step away from him. He's lying. Eleanor's voice cut through the mill's damp air like a blade, her shawl slipping from her shoulders as she stepped forward. Clara froze, the journal pressed against her chest, the key burning in her pocket. The woman who'd raised her, who'd sung her lullabies and dried her tears, stood now with a fierceness Clara had never seen, her eyes locked on Thomas like he was a ghost from a nightmare. Gran, what are you doing here? Clara asked, her voice trembling. Eleanor's gaze softened for a moment, but her words were sharp. I followed you, child. I knew you'd come here, chasing your mother's secrets. But this man, she pointed at Thomas, her hand shaking, he's not who he says he is. Thomas raised his hands, his expression a mix of frustration and sorrow. Eleanor, you know me. You know I loved Margaret. I'm not the enemy here. But Eleanor's eyes blazed. You dragged her into this mess, Thomas. You and your reckless dreams. She'd still be alive if not for you. Clara's mind reeled, the air thick with accusations and half-truths. James stepped between them, his voice calm but firm. Someone needs to start explaining. Now. Clara nodded, her heart pounding. Gran, you said you didn't know about the key. But you're here. You know something. Tell me. Eleanor's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from her. She sank onto a crate, her hands twisting the shawl. I wanted to protect you, Clara, she said, her voice breaking. Your mother, she was fearless, but it cost her everything. She trusted Thomas, and he led her to Carver. That man's shadow has hung over this family for too long. Thomas knelt before Eleanor, his voice low. I never meant for her to get hurt, Eleanor. You know that. Margaret found out Carver was stealing land from families in Willowbrook, forging deeds, driving people out. She wanted to stop him. I helped her hide the evidence. But when she got sick, I couldn't protect her anymore. Clara opened the journal, her fingers trembling as she flipped to a page she'd skimmed earlier. Margaret's words leapt out. Carver's men are watching. If I fall, the truth must stay hidden until Clara is ready. She looked up, her voice shaking. This lockbox, it's the evidence, isn't it? Proof of what Carver did. Thomas nodded. It's documents, deeds, letters, ledgers. Enough to put him away. But Carver's powerful, Clara. He's got eyes everywhere. If you open that box, you're picking up your mother's fight. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. And you could lose everything, like she did. The weight of the choice pressed down on Clara. She looked at James, his steady gaze anchoring her. What do you think? She asked. He took her hand, his voice soft but resolute. This is your mother's legacy, Clara. But it's your life. Whatever you choose, I'm with you. Clara's eyes fell to the journal, her mother's words a beacon in the darkness. She thought of Margaret's courage, her dreams, her love poured into these pages for a daughter she'd never see grow up. I can't walk away, Clara said finally, her voice steady. She wanted me to be strong. I have to try. Thomas led them to a corner of the mill, where a loose stone in the foundation hid a small, rusted lockbox. Clara's hands shook as she inserted the key, the lock clicking open with a sound that echoed like fate. Inside were papers, brittle but intact, detailing Carver's crimes, forged signatures, stolen land, families displaced. There was also a letter from Margaret. Clara, if you're reading this, You found my heart. Be brave, but be wise. I love you always." Tears streamed down Clara's face as she handed the letter to Eleanor, who clutched it to her chest, sobbing. "She was so much like you," Eleanor whispered. "So stubborn, so brave." Thomas watched in silence, his own grief etched into his face. For a moment, the mill was a sanctuary, holding the weight of their shared loss. But the moment shattered with the sound of footsteps outside. Heavy, deliberate, not the tread of a villager. James tensed, pulling Clara behind him. "Someone's coming," he whispered. Thomas's eyes narrowed. "Carver's men. They've been watching me for years. We need to move." Clara clutched the lockbox, her heart racing. "Where do we go?" she asked, panic rising. Eleanor stood, her frailty giving way to resolve. "Back to the cottage. It's the safest place for now. We'll figure out what to do next." Thomas nodded, but his expression was grim. "Hurry. They won't wait." They slipped out of the mill, the river's roar masking their escape. The countryside, once a place of peace, now felt like a maze of shadows. Clara held the lockbox tightly, her mother's courage burning within her. But as they reached the cottage, a new figure emerged from the darkness, a young woman, no older than Clara, her face pale but determined. "You have it, don't you?" she said, her voice urgent. "I'm Lily. Carver's my father, and I want to help you stop him." Lily's words hung in the night air, a spark in the darkness that left Clara reeling. The daughter of the man who'd haunted her mother's life stood before her, her eyes fierce with a resolve that mirrored Clara's own. The cottage loomed behind them, its windows glowing faintly, a fragile haven against the storm brewing outside. "Why should we trust you?" James asked, his voice sharp, his body angled protectively in front of Clara. Lily's gaze didn't waver. "Because I've seen what my father does," she said. "He's destroyed families, taken everything they have. I found out about your mother's evidence years ago. I've been waiting for someone to finish what she started." Clara's fingers tightened around the lockbox, the weight of her mother's legacy grounding her. Eleanor stepped forward, her shawl drawn tight, her eyes searching Lily's face. "You're just a child," she said softly. "Why risk this?" Lily's jaw clenched. "Because it's right, and because I'm tired of living in his shadow." Thomas, silent until now, spoke up. "She's telling the truth. Margaret knew Lily when she was a girl. She pitied her, trapped in that house with Carver. If Lily says she'll help, we need her." Clara looked from Thomas to Lily, then to Eleanor, whose face was a mask of conflict. The choice was hers, and it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. "All right," Clara said finally, her voice steady. "But we do this together. No secrets." Lily nodded, a flicker of relief in her eyes. They hurried inside the cottage, locking the door behind them. The fire was low, casting long shadows as they spread the lockbox's contents across the table: deeds, letters, ledgers, all proof of Carver's greed. Clara's heart ached as she read her mother's notes, each word a testament to her courage. "We need to get this to the authorities," James said, scanning the documents. "But Carver's got influence. We need a plan." Lily leaned forward, her voice low. "There's a lawyer in town, Miss Harper. She's honest, and she's been looking into my father for years. If we can get these to her, she'll know what to do." Eleanor's hands trembled as she touched a letter in Margaret's handwriting. "This could ruin us all," she whispered. "Carver won't let this go quietly." Clara took her grandmother's hand, her resolve hardening. "Then we'll be louder. For Mom." The plan was simple but perilous. Lily would lead them to Harper's office under cover of darkness, avoiding Carver's men. Thomas knew the back roads, paths Carver's hired hands wouldn't expect. They set out at midnight, the countryside silent save for the rustle of leaves and the distant howl of a dog. Clara carried the lockbox, her mother's journal tucked inside, a talisman against fear. The journey was tense, every shadow a threat. Lily moved with quiet confidence, her knowledge of her father's tactics guiding them. But as they neared the town, headlights flashed in the distance. "Get down," Thomas hissed, pulling them into a ditch. Two men, Carver's enforcers, patrolled the road, their voices low and menacing. Clara's heart pounded, but Lily's hand on her arm was steady. "They won't find us," she whispered. "Not tonight." They reached Harper's office just before dawn, a small building on the edge of town. Harper, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, listened as Clara explained, her expression growing graver with each document. "This is enough to bring him down," she said, her voice firm. "But it won't be easy. Carver's got friends in high places. We'll need to move fast." As Harper prepared to file the evidence, Clara felt a mix of triumph and dread. Her mother's fight was alive again, but the cost was still unknown. She looked at James, his quiet strength a lifeline, and at Eleanor, whose eyes shone with pride and fear. Lily stood apart, her face a mask of determination, a daughter defying her father's legacy. The first rays of sunlight broke over Willowbrook as they left Harper's office, the weight of their actions settling in. Clara clutched the locket, her mother's words echoing in her heart. "Be brave, but be wise." She had chosen bravery, but the fight was far from over. Carver would come for them, and the countryside, once a place of peace, was now a battlefield. As they returned to the cottage, Eleanor pulled Clara close, her shawl enveloping them both. "You're your mother's daughter," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "She'd be so proud." Clara nodded, her own tears falling. The locket felt warm against her skin, a reminder of the love that had guided her here. But in the distance, a car engine rumbled, too close for comfort. Thomas's face hardened. "He knows," he said. "We need to be ready." Clara looked at her family, James, Eleanor, Lily. Even Thomas, and felt a surge of strength. Whatever came next, they would face it together.